Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vedyad Ravinam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we are making our way through the 7th chapter. And what verse are we on?
135
Say again.
for today. Today is 135.
135.
I'm gonna get some water.
Okay. Do you have a copy of the text, Michael?
No, I don't.
Okay. You all watch it.
Chapter 7.
Yes. 135.
Sakshat Kritat Madhi Sab Sakshat Kritat Madhi Samyag Viparyaya Abadhitah Kimichin Na Kasya Kamaya Sharira Manu Sanjavare. He who has properly realized Brahman and is not troubled by erroneous conviction, desiring what and to please whom will he suffer following. Let me read again. He who has properly realized Brahman and is not troubled by erroneous conviction, quote, desiring what and to please whom will he suffer following the afflictions of his body and mind.
So here, Vidyaranya is quoting scripture. Does he have a footnote where it's from?
It's a quotation from verse 1, I guess, of this chapter.
Of this chapter, yes. So the idea here is the mark of the person of steady wisdom is all the doubts have been cut asunder. Now, this is paradoxical. Listen carefully. It's the nature of the mind, the intellect, to continue the throw of doubt. And in the beginning, we try to resolve your doubts. The Vedanta is profoundly rational. But in the end, it is a non-intellectual path for intellectuals. People who have Shastravasana, exoteric meaning is unnecessary study of the scriptures. The deeper meaning is I keep wanting to figure stuff out. And here, what Vidyaranya is talking about at the deepest level is when the yogi quits believing his mind. When you grasp that you cannot think a real thought, no thoughts are true, no thoughts are real. Now, in the world of Vyavahara transactions, yes, of course, we have fake news, we have verifiable news. But in the science of self-knowledge, the only thing that's real is aham. Everything else, mithya, vaitadya, illusion, false. True story. So many years ago, I was walking back from the gym. Believe it or not, I used to go to the gym. I get a phone call from an old student. I have no idea how to really goes. Jim, are you enlightened? And I said, wait a minute, let me go sit down before I answer this question. And I said to him, Alan, I've quit asking the question. Now, if you were to ask me, do I have any doubts about my essential nature? No. Don't try to be an enlightened person. No personal sense of self is real. In a quiet mind, when you can find the space between your thoughts. Introvert your inquiry. Who are you? And do you see, to use Vidyaranya's language, you are kutastha. That stillness, that being that never changes. And once you get it, it's yourself. When are you ever not you? In the most ordinary waking state, you're still you. You're not a person. That's why I like to use Gaudapada's language. I don't like to use the word jiva or especially jivatma. I think that gets us into trouble. I prefer Gaudapada's language. Jiva bhavana, the attitude or the feeling that I'm a person, that I'm an individual. Without any exceptions, that is rooted in ignorance and illusion. So it's simply the renunciation of the mind itself. So even if Jiva Bhavana arises, you know it's not real. Don't engage in its silly efforts at resolution, which always take the form of, yeah, you win, it'll be better if. And if we're not careful, ego starts to own the spiritual path. I'm getting very close. Oh, I had this experience. I had a really deep samadhi. Is this it? Have I arrived there? Who is it who's concerned with all that bullshit? Not. So at the moment of realization, the Shisha does not exclaim, I know Brahman. She exclaims, I am Brahman. Very important point. If you don't renounce that, then your mind continues to be afflicted. Do I know, don't I know? Do I know, don't I know? What is it you're trying to know? Do I need to do more sadhana? Do I need to have a deeper experience? What's going to have an experience? It's just another stupid mind state. And what's the truth about all mind states? They're temporary. Say again? They are temporary. They are temporary. But you are not temporary. Don't believe me? No. Now, this is not teaching we give to beginners, or even intermediate students. To beginners, you want to become a mumukshu, a seeker after liberation. Gita, Krishna says, by all means, become a yogi. That's an ego state. I'm a mumukshu, I'm desirous of liberation. But once you begin to get these deep intimations of your essential nature, then the practice shifts. The self is not a mumukshu. And here what Vidyaranya is pointing at is all our striving cease. So the sadhak, the student, the mumukshu, is seen to be doing spiritual practices so that they can purify their mind and realize the self. But the jnani may be seen to be doing spiritual practices. It does not add to their knowledge of the self. They do it because they enjoy it. It's the highest form of worldly pleasure. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
जगन्मिथ्यात्वधि भावात् अशिक्तौ काम्यकामुकौ तयोरभावे संताप शाम्ये निस्नेहिदीपवत्. When the conviction of the unreality of the world has been reached, there is neither desire nor the desirer. desirer. In their absence, the pain caused by unfulfilled desires ceases like the flame of a lamp without oil.
Yes. So this flame of a lamp without oil, it's the fuel, starves the flame. So this idea, Jagan Mithya, the phenomenal world is illusory. It isn't bad. Again, Shankara in Vivekachudamani has disgust for the physical world, and especially disgust for the body. It's vile and, little, filled with urine and feces and all this kind of stuff. Early meditations to help us break those really deeply rooted attachments, especially to sex. But in the end, the phenomenal world is simply shunyata. It's void. It's empty. Pretty to look at. But the names and forms are Vaithatya, false. They have no inherent joy or misery. Let me illustrate worldly pleasure. So I get out a great big piece of butcher paper and I decide that I like carrots. So I draw a carrot. And then I fix it to a stick just a little bit longer than my arm. Put that, attach it to a thing on my head. Then I start running after the carrot that I created by Sankalpa and imbued with joy-giving qualities. And then when there's a gust of wind and I can grab the picture of the carrot, I have achieved my desire. That's all that happens. There's nothing of value in the world. Brahma Satyam. That's where the joy is. That's where the peace is. That's where the satisfaction is. But Jim, I do enjoy chocolate pie. It's not void. It's delicious. Well, let's look at what's happening. When desire and object of desire become one for a moment, the low-level agitation of my mind stops. I call that happiness. What it really is a taste of my own self-nature. I just use the world as a medium in order to have a mediated experience of what's essentially myself. All yoga suggests that we do. Why not try an immediate experience? How do I do that? Let go of the world. Let the mind come home. Chidabrahma Rupaha, my form is bliss consciousness. Now, this is why, as Patanjali says, abhyasa vairagya cha. That's what's so important. Practice our meditation and keep letting go of the world. Keep letting go of the world. Why? The ruthless rule of the mind is the mind will return to the experience that's given it the greatest joy. Now, you may have a good idea that I don't think sex is the greatest thing in the world, or the attention or approval of other people, or the validation of the people I care about. But if you really value those things, that's where your mind's going to return to, because that's where you've got the greatest joy. Thank God. Self is the most beloved. Because even if we have one experience of the world falling away and the mind drowned in the self, when we return from that, the ruthless rule of the mind then becomes our moksha. Oh, I want to do that again. Oh, yeah. I want that. Then we develop the burning desire for liberation because it's so satisfying. So those of us who come to class, here's the scriptures, maybe get tuned up in class, maybe watch YouTube videos, maybe do some reading, but don't have a meditation practice. It will be challenging to experience that Atmaramana, that reveling in the self, independent of the world. If that's your condition, as much as you may intellectually know, oh, the world is void. Jagan Mithya. Yeah. Don't tell anybody. I'm gonna go play with the world. And you'll keep doing it. This is what I think the Master Jesus meant when he said, I have overcome the world. Doesn't mean he beat everybody up. Yoga Vasishtha, there's the story about the fellow who finds the Chintamani, the wish-fulfilling gem, but not recognizing it for what it is, disregards it, and then digs up pieces of worthless glass that's colored, thinking he's got all these valuable gems. That's what you and I do. So all our strivings cease. As we quit working, your body will fulfill its product. But we've smashed the idea. I'll be happy when, it'll be better if. What's wrong with my life is I need more of this. Or we may externalize it. What's wrong with my life is the world is not behaving like I think it should be. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Gandharva patane kinchit Indre jali ka nirmite Janan kamayate kintu jihasati hasan nidam. When the visitor knows the magician's city of Gandharvas and its objects is unreal, he desires nothing and laughs at its deceptive nature.
Yes. So if you go see a magic show and the magician here, a better translation would be hypnotist. When they, a better modern day allegory would be the movies. So children, we don't take them to action movies or violent movies because they get too identified. But you go to the movies. Oh, that was great. I loved it. When they blew up the city, that was really cool. Why? Because we know it's not real. We don't go home and mourn the loss of the people who were killed. So also, as the yogi continues to meditate on this idea, Brahma Satyam Jagan Nitya. What is this world? Just mental imagery. How has it come about? Sankalpena, by means of Sankalpa. What's really here? Brahman. Don't worry. Be happy. Now, some people say, but that's irresponsible, Jim. There's evil in the world. There's bad in the world. We never say that the knowledge that it's all Brahman doesn't mean that it's all nicey nice. The way I like to approach it, which is more real, a good dream or a bad dream? Both unreal. That's the point. That's the point. Next verse.
Apadaram niyeshu bhogeshvevam vicharvan nano ranjayati kinte etat doshatrisha. Similarly, a wise man does not seek enjoyment in the pleasing objects. He is convinced of their defects, their impermanence and illusoriness, and gives them up.
Yes. Now, if in enjoying a pleasant objects come, he doesn't avoid them. One of my favorite Swamiji stories. Mark, you might have even been there. So this was up at Krishnalaya. And Swamiji was out on the garden outside the house where he used to stay. Remember when he used to, we would just have satsang in the evenings and stuff like that. And there were maybe 20 or 30 of us sitting there on the lawn. And he was talking and stuff like that. And someone brought a little Hershey thing, like what the kids get at Halloween. And he stops. He takes the chocolate and he unfolds. He pops it in his mouth. then goes back to satsang. He enjoyed it, but he knew exactly what was happening. Why did he like chocolate candy? Force of the vast majority. There's no inherent. Listen, did he go seeking chocolate? No, it came to him. And if he was going to eat chocolate, he was going to do nothing else but eat chocolate. And when he was finished, it was gone. And then he was present to us. Were you there for that, Mark?
No, I don't remember that.
Oh, I just loved it. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience to see him do that. So the yogi is not afraid of the work. Swamiji would enjoy the music and the dancing in the evenings, but he didn't yearn for it. So the mind of the yogi is such that he accepts whatever comes, doesn't worry about what doesn't come, fulfills his role in life. Only you can decide whether or not you've got a serious klesha, affliction. I really want this. Or a serious aversion. This is not tolerable to me. Any thoughts on this? Now, you've heard me say this many times. We are not healed so much by what we turn from as by what we turn to. Turn the mind to the self. Soak the mind in the roar of Om. Swamiji has written in. And let the world leave you. Don't worry about it too much. It will go. Or you continue to revel. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
अर्थानामार्जने क्लेश तथैव परिपालने नाशे दुःखं व्यये दुःखं दिगर्थान् क्लेशकारिणः. Wealth brings worry in earning, anxiety in maintenance, grief in loss, and sorrow in spending. Woe unto this sorrow producing wealth.
So here he gives us the biography of the wealthy person and what their mind goes through. So what was the first idea?
Wealth brings worry in earning.
Yes. So most of us have a fear of financial insecurity. That's root chakra stuff. And I have news for you. No amount of wealth will take away that fear. The more you make, the more you get entangled, and fear arises. The only thing that frees us from that fear is sannyas. Interior sannyas. I from the man or the woman who's focused on wealth, all the worry and the accrual. I can't tell you how many of my students come in with railroad tracks on their forehead, worry, worry, worry. Working 50, 60 hours a week. All the upset. Am I successful at my job? For what? So what happens after the worry of acquiring wealth?
Anxiety and maintenance.
Yeah. Oh my God, the stock market's going down. What about my IRA, my 401k? Property values have dropped because interest rates are going up. I want to sell my condo, but it's dropped $200,000 in value. What am I going to do? I'm not making these stories up, by the way. I hear them. So once you've acquired wealth, the anxiety of maintaining. Next idea.
Grief and loss.
So what is the inevitable result of all created things? Gone. So when we lose our money, stock market goes down. My IPO stock loses all its value. I don't want my money anymore. Then we can be really troubled because then we start to lose our integrity in an effort to try to get back to some idea of a standard of living. Next idea.
Sorrow and spending.
Spend my money. No, I cheap. I won't spend money on that. So we think of money as a possession rather than what it is, which is simply energy. It's stored labor. That's what money is. It's meant to flow through. Next one, I think it's the last one in that series.
And this was the last one. Yeah. Go and do this sorrow producing.
And of course, nobody can take, just the Egyptians, they're the only ones who can take a U-Haul to the grave. You and I, everything that you've acquired will be divided by your survivors. And what is the very frequent mind state of our survivors? The distance between grief and greed is 6 feet. Hindus won't understand this. In the West, where we bury people, the graves are 6 feet deep. Let's read the will. What am I going to get? That's what you have to look for. There is no virtue in poverty. No one thinks about money more than a poor person. But there's enormous value in simplicity. Many of us on the spiritual path deliberately choose to live a life of simplicity without a lot of encumbering ownership. Because artha, wealth, always needs to be maintained. Now, if your prarabdha puts you in a position, that's a different story. Of course, we have the great example of King Janaka. We have Vidyaranya. You know, his karma was to be a counselor to kings. But then he decided to become a sannyasi. That still didn't let him off the hook. They decided to make him Shankaracharya. So he had to end up running the whole damn thing. But the yogi understands getting what I want is not what's going to make me happy. Getting what I want simply gets me what I want. And then I have to deal with it. Any thoughts about this? Next verse.
Mansa Panchalicayastu Yantra Lolenga Panjare Nyayavasthi Granthi Shalinya Striya Kimesho Bhavan. What real beauty is there in women who are but a conglomeration of fleshy muscles, bones, and glands? They are a mass of flesh encaged in restless limbs.
So again, as so many of these writers in this culture talk about, I don't know why they just, pick on women. But the whole idea of what's behind it all, sex is very powerful. And it's so easy for it to become an attachment. But I will tell you from direct experience, relationships are a lot of hard work. And if you have a baby, your cousin and his wife, they have 18 years minimum of work ahead of them. Already started, hasn't it? Mm-hmm. And what are the current stats? It's about $1.5 million to raise a child now. So, yeah, a lot of money. Knock yourself out. But it will set the direction of your attention, your work, your life, and your responsibilities. Now, back in Vidyaranya's time, if you were going to be sexually active, it was appropriate to do it within the confines of marriage. And if you were going to do that, you were going to have children. A lot of attention, a lot of work, a lot of responsibility. Whereas the life of a sannyasi gives you a lot more freedom. Now, I can only speak from my own direct experience. If you've reached a point where you want to embrace brahmacharya, I believe brahmacharya is a gift, not a discipline. It does us no good to get rid of the objects and let the desire remain behind. Krishna calls people like that hypocrites. But then he says, but their desire leaves them on seeing the Supreme. And if you live a life without sexual encounters, after a while you quit thinking about it most of the time. And all of the rishis, without exception, were householders. We balance it with that. Enough on that. Next verse.
एवम् आदिषु शास्त्रेषु दोषा सम्यक् प्रपञ्चिताः विमृश्य नन्निशं तानि कथं दुःखेषु मञ्जति. Such are the defects of worldly pleasures, elaborately pointed out by the scriptures. No wise person aware of these defects will allow themselves to be drowned in afflictions caused by them.
So to sum it up, I love what Nisargadatta Maharaj says. He says worldly pleasure and suffering are the same thing. Meaning, if I engage in the world with the serious notion, this is what I want, this is what's going to bring me happiness, it will bring us sorrow. And if I have a vasana in that area, what's the first power of a vasana?
Wailing power.
Veiling power. It is the vasanas themselves that rob me of self-apprehension. And then after the Avarana Shakti, what comes next? Vikshepa Shakti, meaning I think I'm a person and I want stuff. You know, I have kartavya, I got to struggle for it. That's the fruit of indiscriminate revelry with the objects of the senses. Next verse.
Shuddhya pidayamanopi na visham hyutu michhati misthana dhva tatrijjanam mudhasta jidghata sati. Even a man afflicted with great hunger does not wish to eat poison, much less one who is already satisfied with sweetmeats.
Yes. So if you know something is poisonous, you avoid it. I think the greatest modern example, I have a student or had a student who for 25 years didn't know why she had all this tummy trouble. And then she was tested and found out that she was gluten sensitive. She has celiac disease. It is not very common among Indians, it's mostly Europeans. Once she found out what the problem was, she began to practice giving up gluten. Wasn't easy, but she saw that the indiscriminate revelry with gluten caused her to be sick. Another example, Person goes out with their friends for a party on Friday night and they drink cheap champagne. And they wake up Saturday morning with a headache and an upset stomach. And in their ignorance, oh, I must have a touch of the flu. Meaning they don't see the cause and effect. They don't realize that the cheap champagne Friday night gave them alcohol poisoning. That's what a hangover is. Who here at times is restless, discontent, can't sit still? That is a spiritual hangover. That is the direct feeling of vasana pressure. You can have it as much as you wish. If you like being that discontent, go do more indiscriminate revelry with the objects of the senses. It'll agitate your mind even more. But in our foolishness, we think, no, let me go satisfy the desire. That'll stop the itch. And all it does, that's like the person who says, oh, I've got such a hangover. A Bloody Mary will help. And then by the afternoon, oh God, I feel terrible. Maybe a beer will settle my stomach. No, we develop these addictive relationships. Desire and its precursor, restlessness, agitation, discontent, is a spiritual hangover. That's all it is. It's the inevitable result of yesterday's indiscriminate revelry with the objects of the senses. So in Vivekachudamani, Shankar will say about Shama, that peaceful state of mind when it rests in steady contemplation of the goal after having again and again, muhur muhu, detached itself from the chaos of the sense objects. How? Steady observation of their defects. That doesn't mean I say money is bad, sex is bad. No, I understand the phenomenon. Desire and object of desire become one, and I attribute the happiness to the object. It leaves a vasana in my mind. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
प्रारब्ध कर्म प्राबल्यात् भोगेश विच्छा भवेद्यति क्लिश्यन्नेव तदाप्येष भुङ्क्ते विष्टिगृहीतवत्.
Was that prarabdha or prarabdha?
Prarabdha.
Yeah.
If by the force of his fructifying karma, a wise man is compelled to enjoy the fruits of desires, he does so with indifference and great reluctance, like a man who is impressed for labor.
Yes. So sometimes the force of the past, or prarabdha, is so strong, we end up doing it anyway. In St. Paul's letter to the Romans, he frames it this way: I do not do that which I would do, and I do that which I hate. Sound familiar? And then he says, therefore is not I that do it, but sin that is lodged in my limbs. That was his understanding that there's a force of the past that impels me into activity, even when I know better. So, what do you want to do? Stand back and watch. Notice what it feels like to be caught in the tyranny of craving. Mudha. That's what I used to call my mind. Food. Pay attention to when you satisfy a desire. Desire and object of desire become one. The happiness that I feel is not in the object. Own your ananda. It's a taste of yourself. So if we can continue to see that, even though because of prarabdha we're impelled into ego-prompted activity, we can exhaust it without creating new stuff. If you want to understand how to do this in its completest fashion, go back to chapters 3, 4, and 5 in Gita. That gives us how to do karma yoga. Any thoughts on this? And in time, they wear out. Next verse.
भुञ्जाना वा अपि बुधा श्रद्धावन्त कुटुम्बिनः नाध्यापि कर्मणच्छन्न इति क्लिश्यन्ति सन्तमन्. The wise, having spiritual faith, if forced by their fructifying karma to live a family life, maintaining many relations, always sorrowfully think, "Ah, the bonds of karma are not yet torn off."
Yes. So, in other words, I'm not sure I agree with Vidyaranya there. Fulfill your duty. If you have a wife and family, cherish them. Do the best you can with it. But understand, always understand, this is just my prarabdha. Let go of those false ideas. Oh, it'll be so much better if I have a baby. I always think of my older brother. He was quite a rascal when he was a young man. Not treat women with a lot of respect. Let me just put it that way. So the Lord gave him 3 daughters. And then when they became teenagers, his greatest fear was they would go out and date a guy with morals like his. It was very, very funny. Now, all his kids turned out really well. He's a very good dad. But nothing in this world is all joy or all sorrow. We get our allotted dose. And you're going to do what you're going to do. So this is this last idea that Krishna covers in the 5th chapter of Gita, the renunciation of the sense of agency. Who is the agent? Guna and karma. qualities of mind, and the force of the past. Yogi stands back. I do nothing. And in God's hands, this prarabdha can become useful. So, for example, when Swamiji was a young man, he was quite politically active. Many people thought if he hadn't become a yogi, he might have ended up being Prime Minister of India. His prarabdha has brought lots of powerful people were brought into his orbit. But what did he do? He worked tirelessly, 7 days a week, for 40 years plus, trying to convert Hindus back to Hinduism, to bring to young Indians the truth of their own culture. So in many ways, he never left his Swadharma. And he founded hospitals and the schools and microeconomies and wrote 40 books. Work, 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 work. I was proud of that. So Swami Chidananda of the Divine Life Mission, who was one of his closest friends, said, "Oh, Chinmaya, he is all Ashanti, so that we shall." Proud of it. Any thoughts on this? All right, next verse.
Nayam kleshostra sansara tapakintu viraktata Bhranti jnana nidano hi tapa sansarika smritaha. This sorrow is not due to the afflictions of the world, but a dislike for it, for the worldly afflictions are caused by erroneous conviction about its reality.
Yes, and again, I will push back on Vidyaranya. I think the real man of knowledge or woman of knowledge does not sorrow at prarabdha. That's just what he is. Fulfill your duty in the world. See it with equal vision. But that yogi has the firm understanding. I'm impelled into action by the force of the past and the desires of other people. There's nothing to be gained in this. Well, will I just sit around and do nothing? No. I jokingly tell people the Lord has led me through this life by my wallet. In the end, I do not live as a sannyasi in a cave in India. I live in the West. And I have to pay the rent. I have to do something. I won't be useful. Proud of me. Next verse.
Vivekena pariklishya nalpa bhogena tripyati anyathananta bhagyepi naiva tripyati karhichit. A man endowed with discrimination sees the defects of enjoyment and is satisfied even with little, whereas he who is subject to illusion is not satisfied even with endless enjoyments.
Yes. So the person of steady wisdom lives in santosha, lives in contentment. Very little is necessary. But back on this prior idea of prarabdha, I can remember hearing Swamiji say, the last year of his life, he was so sick. You know, he had lost most of the sensation in his legs from his diabetes. His heart condition was just terrible. He couldn't breathe. He could barely walk. And he says, "Oh, my disciples are so attached to me, they won't let me go." His sense was his time was gone, time to go home to God. But we wanted him to be around. It was our desire that kept him in the body. I haven't quite articulated it clearly the way he said it. It was very clear. It wasn't even his prarabdha much anymore. It was ours who was keeping it around. Next verse.
न जातु कामकामानाम् उपभोगेन शाभ्यति हविषा कृष्णवत्मेव भूय एवाभिवर्धते. The desires are never quelled by enjoyment, but increase more like the flame of a fire-fed, unclarified butter.
Yes. So again, the idea here is the mind is like the fire filled with desire. And in our foolishness, we think if I keep feeding the fire with the fuel of sensory experience, that it will calm that burn. That's not our experience. Who's made enough money? Swamiji used to say, if sex were satisfying, you'd only do it once. And any of us who ourselves have struggled with addiction or have friends who have, we know what tyranny. The bhogi practices bhoga. He lives a life based on the idea that the satisfaction of my desires is going to make me happy. The more I satisfy, the better off I'll be. The end result is more desire. The yogi practices yoga. She too wants happiness, but she sets forth in a way of life that reduces the number of desires entertained. Therefore, finds some real peace. All right, one more, then we'll quit.
परिज्ञायोऽप्यभुक्तो हि भोगो भवति तुष्यते विज्ञाय सेवितक्षोरो मैत्रिमेति न चोरताम्. But when the impermanence of pleasure is known, the gratification of desires may bring the idea of, quote, enough of it. It is like a thief who, having been knowingly employed in service, does not behave like a thief, but like a friend.
So I'm not sure I, again, like Vidyaranya's idea. I think the modern notion of bottoming out, for those of us who have been around, for example, 12-step programs, a bottom is when you get sick and tired of being sick and tired. When you've been beaten into reasonableness by the suffering. And then you develop the desire to be free from the tyranny of addiction. I know. So, to sum up this section, and there may be more, but to sum up what we've done this evening, understand vairagya, that desire to give up attachment to all enjoyments gained through the senses and any personal sense of self, starting from the body up to and including the form of Brahma, the creator, does not come from some moral discipline. Nobody's strong enough. But it does come through insight. When I finally see the price I'm paying by living a life boga, then I develop mature vairagya. And again, it's not something we tend to achieve overnight. All right, we'll end here. What verse are we on for next week?
149.
149 for next week. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Sri Guru Kyo Namaha. Hari Om.